Hello and welcome everyone to my presentation about dialects and accents. Now, have you ever wondered what dialects and accents are, and when do we use what, and what do they have to do with the language? Well, let's find out. Let's start with the definition of a language. According to Max Weinreich, a language is a dialect with an army and a navy. Let me explain this using the following example. The former Yugoslavian Republic consisted of a number of countries, as you can see. In this republic, there was one nationwide language called the Serbo-Croatian. When the countries became independent, they all started using their own version of this language, resulting in the creation of Serbian, Slovenian, and so on. So basically, these languages are all dialects of the Serbo-Croatian, creating a languages army. If you go to Serbia, for example, and in the north they speak in a certain accent, which you cannot hear in the south, this accent forms a languages navy. We can contrast this with English, which is spoken all around the world, but classified as different standard dialects, such as American English, British English, Australian English, and so on. So in explaining Max's theory, we have established that a dialect is actually a version of a language, but only regional. In Great Britain, for example, there are a numerous amount of different dialects, such as Scottish, Welsh, Geordie, and so on. Ian Macmillan, born and raised in Great Britain and a poet from Yorkshire, has been collecting words from some time and made an interesting discovery. While collecting words, he concluded that in the space of a few miles from Hull to Sheffield, the Yorkshire accent changes. He starts in Hull, where the people talk with long E's and talk very slowly. In Bradford, the people no longer pronounce the TS sound, and in Barnsley, the people have a much harsher accent. When he arrives in Sheffield, he hears that the people no longer pronounce the TH sound. It becomes a D. So instead of this and that, it becomes this and that. Or father and brother. Brother becomes father and brother. There is, however, a bit of history behind these accents. The traces of all people who have come and gone, and the work they have left behind, is all hidden in the layers of speech, often without us knowing. For example, the frame or phrase, "Come on, Cloudhead," frame Tessin. Cloudhead comes from cloudhead, which means idiot. And frame this'n is an expression that comes from the Old English from a long time ago and means get on with it. So if somebody says this, he actually means come on, you idiot, get on with it. Accents and dialects were, however, not always respected. A good generation ago, it was expected that everyone would talk in something called RP, or received pronunciation, also known as the Queen's English. It found its origin in the class system used at the time. Talking in your specific dialect or accent was regarded not done, and would grant you the title of being socially inferior. By using RP, or received pronunciation, you were meant to hide this, so that no one would know from which class you truly were. RP was developed from the regional accent in the southeast of England. But why there? Well, there are a number of reasons. First of all, because of William Caxton, the first man in Great Britain to set up a printing press, and he did so in the southeast of England, using the local language and spelling in his first printing works. It was also the most populous region at the time, and home to the royal family. Another word for RP is BBC English. At the beginning of 1922, the broadcasters were instructed to use RP when they were on air. This changed, however, with the coming of the Second World War. If the Germans were able to use spies and infiltrate the BBC, then it would be easy to mimic this RP, but by letting the broadcasters talk using their dialects or accent from time to time, it would be very hard, if not impossible, for a German to mimic that accent, blowing their cover in the process. However, this RP left its mark, and according to Professor Alan Ross, it was meant to differentiate between U, which means upper class, and non-U, which means middle class. He argued that the upper class weren't necessarily better educated, or cleaner, or richer than anyone else. The only thing which made them distinguishable from the rest was their language. The professor wrote and published an article about this, and it fell into the hands of author Nancy Mitford. She expanded the article on the U and non-U theme and added a few own suggestions to a glossary of terms. This provoked a debate, however, about the English class consciousness and snobbery. But can a U speaker become a non-U speaker become a U speaker? Well, according to Alan Ross, you cannot. A U speaker would be able to pick out a non-U by merely listening to their pronunciation. During this discussion, however, the class system in Britain was already beginning to loosen. The distinction began to blur, and so did the boundaries between accents. What is interesting, though, is that today the list of U words is now basically used by as good as everyone. So where does this leave U and non-U? Well, U is now known as standard RP, while non-U can be described as estuary English, which is somewhere between RP and Cockney accent. When we look at accents and dialects today, a lot has changed. In the call center in Newcastle, people are sometimes praised with their accent. They have done a poll, and the results were the following. Yorkshire and Geordie accent are known as the most warm, friendly, and pleasing to the ear, while Scottish means you are very trustworthy, and Irish and Welsh complete the list very high. But Liverpudlian Scouse and Birmingham Brummie have to do with being the most unappealing accents. If they want to talk to someone in authority, received pronunciation is to be expected from that person. So received pronunciation has not died. It is still expected that if a people or someone wants to talk to someone in authority, such as the Prime Minister we see here, these people have to use received pronunciation. It makes the people talking to them a little bit more comfortable. So what can we conclude today? Well, a language has a certain amount of dialects, and dialects can have a certain amount of accents. But accents and dialects have changed over time. They were more important then, they have been neglected at a certain point, and now they're returning and being ever more praised from time to time. I hope you have learned something today. I especially did about the English language and about language in itself, and I will see you next time.